I never imagined a simple Sunday dinner would end with my own son calling me a loser. "You're a loser, Mom." But Linda, Dad's wife, she's the real mother I never had. Those words didn't echo. They sliced through me, neat and precise. He dropped his fork with a sharp clang and leaned back as if he'd said something ordinary, like commenting on the weather. Anna gasped somewhere to my right, but I barely noticed. The roasted chicken cooled untouched on my plate. All my attention locked on Michael, my only son, the baby I once cradled after 16 hours of labor, through endless nights of crying, broken bones, and the wreckage of a divorce. Now he sat across from me, eyes filled with contempt, like I was some nuisance he'd outgrown. "Michael," Anna's voice trembled, strained. "How could you?" He only shrugged, chewing lazily, as if he hadn't just trampled everything I'd ever done for him. Around the table, my grandchildren stared in silence, wide-eyed and frightened. At the far end, Linda, my ex-husband's new wife, smiled with quiet satisfaction, dabbing her lips with the linen napkin I'd bought. "You always ruin everything," Michael muttered. "God, we invite you over and it turns into a pity fest." No one moved, no one spoke. Only the faint scrape of cutlery and Linda's carefully timed sigh broke the silence. I sat there, frozen, in the very chair where I once rocked him to sleep, trying to understand how love had somehow become a debt in his mind. Maybe he hadn't changed at all. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. When I looked at him, it wasn't as a mother gazing at her child anymore. It was the way you'd look at a stranger who's pushed you off a cliff without a hint of remorse. He didn't even blink. Something ended at that table that night. But it wasn't me. Not this time. I just sat there, stunned, asking myself what kind of man humiliates his own mother in front of everyone, his sister, his kids, and the woman who replaced me, like cruelty was a form of pride. "You don't get it," Michael said to Anna, his tone impatient, as though her voice had interrupted something important. "You think she's a saint? You have no clue what it was like living with her after Dad left." I turned my head toward him slowly, not to scare him, but because I wanted to see his face as he dismantled me piece by piece. He didn't hesitate. He just kept eating, chewing steadily like this humiliation was casual dinner talk, while my pride quietly bled beneath the tablecloth. "Get out," Anna said, her voice trembling. "If you're going to speak to our mother like that, just leave." Michael laughed under his breath. "Of course you'd side with her. You always do. That's why Dad walked out. She poisons everything, turns everyone against each other." Linda lifted her wineglass with a soft sigh. "Let's not ruin dinner." But dinner was already destroyed. Something inside me had cracked in a way I couldn't repair. I pushed my plate away, stood slowly, my knees popping, a small reminder of all the years they'd carried too much. Groceries, children, regret. No one tried to stop me. Not even Michael. The silence that followed spoke louder than any apology could. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my back, watching the ceiling fan turn in lazy circles above me, useless and slow. My thoughts drifted to the boy he used to be, the one who cried when his turtle died, who squeezed my hand at the dentist even at 9 years old just to comfort me, who sang off-key on road trips until we both laughed ourselves breathless. And then my mind caught on the Camry, that cursed car. 3 years earlier, it had all begun there, when he'd lost everything. A DUI had cost him his license. He'd been fired from yet another sales job, the third one that year. His apartment was gone, his savings completely drained. Meanwhile, Linda and my ex-husband had just come back from a European river cruise. "No signal," Michael said when I asked if they'd even tried calling him back. I still remember standing beside him in that car dealership. He looked utterly defeated, his hair greasy, his eyes sunken, his voice too quiet for a 32-year-old man. "Mom," he murmured, clutching those documents like they might crumble in his hands, "you're saving me." So I dipped into my retirement fund and paid cash. When the dealer handed over the keys, Michael broke down right there, holding me so tightly I could feel every bone through his thin jacket. And in that moment, foolishly, I believed I had my son back. I even snapped a photo of him leaning against the hood, smiling like a kid who still believed in second chances. I tucked that picture away in my phone, marked it as a favorite. But the man who sat at my table tonight wasn't that boy anymore. Somewhere along the line, that version of him had vanished, replaced by someone harder, crueler, and convinced the world owed him everything. And I had let it happen. Every time I bailed him out, with rent, food, or legal fees, I only reinforced the lesson that I'd always be there, no questions asked, wallet open. It wasn't love he felt. It was dependence dressed as gratitude. That truth settled heavy on my chest. And in that quiet, I finally understood. I couldn't be his lifeline anymore. When he left that night, he didn't even look back. Michael shoved his chair away, muttered something about not needing this drama, and stormed out like a sulking teenager. He's 35 years old. From the kitchen window, I watched him stride down the walkway, fumbling with his phone, no doubt texting Linda, recounting every detail like some dutiful messenger. The porch light hit his face just long enough for me to see the anger carved into it. No remorse, no hesitation, only resentment, as if I had humiliated him. He jumped into that Camry I'd bought him, the tires shrieking as he backed out too fast. And in that moment, with my hand still resting on the faucet, something inside me shifted. It didn't shatter. It solidified. Standing amid the half-cleared dishes and silence, I felt a part of me change, the part that always fixed, forgave, and rescued quietly stepped aside, leaving behind a woman who'd finally had enough. Anna appeared in the doorway, her face pale, trembling with anger. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and for once I truly was. Not because anything was right, but because I finally saw everything for what it was. "I'm so sorry he said that," she whispered. I took her hand gently. "He meant it." She blinked, stunned, but I only gave a small, dry smile. It's easier when you stop pretending your child is someone they're not. She opened her mouth to protest, but thought better of it. She'd seen it too. The change. "I'll clean up," I said. She nodded and paused at the doorway. "You don't deserve this, Mom." "No," I replied, calm and steady. "I don't." That night I didn't cry. I didn't beg for clarity or flip through old photographs. I just slept, not peacefully, but decisively. By morning, the air felt different. I brewed a cup of strong black coffee, no cream, no sugar, no softness left, and as dawn brushed the sky in dull gray, I pulled a folder from my desk drawer. It was time to start reclaiming what was mine. I'd held onto that folder for years, a quiet archive of every bill I paid, every mortgage statement, every repair receipt, all the proof of what I'd covered, just until he gets on his feet. My name sat on the deed, on the utilities, behind the roof that sheltered him. People always said motherhood meant sacrifice. They never warned it could also mean being robbed. I drove across town with the windows cracked, the early fall air cool and sharp, carrying that faint scent of endings that make way for beginnings. His house, my house, appeared up ahead, a modest little ranch on Sycamore Street. I remembered walking through it with him the first time, how his eyes had lit up when he said this was where he'd finally turn his life around. I parked by the curb, calm and steady. When I knocked, it took him nearly a minute to answer. His hair stuck out in clumps, his shirt wrinkled, his face swollen from last night's outburst. "Mom, what are you—" "Keys," I said, holding out my hand. He blinked, confused. "What?" "The keys to the house and the car." He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You can't be serious." I didn't flinch. I didn't explain. "Mom, what is this?" "You gave me that house. You gave me the car." "No." I said evenly, pulling the folder from my bag and opening it like a ledger of truths. I paid for them. They're in my name, and I'm done pretending otherwise. He looked around nervously. 2 neighbors lingered nearby, one walking a dog, the other tinkering with sprinklers, trying not to stare. Jesus Christ, this is crazy, he hissed, stepping outside and shutting the door behind him. You can't just show up and... I can, I said quietly, and I am. I extended my hand again. He trailed after me down the driveway, barefoot, shouting, "You gave me that car! You can't take it back." His voice carried through the morning air, far too loud for 7:30. Curtains shifted across the street. Sprinklers hissed in rhythm, like the world itself was watching. I turned toward him, calm and certain. The keys were already in my hand. The Camry sat in the driveway, dust still clinging to it from the drive he never should have taken. "Remember the day I bought this?" I asked evenly. "You said I was saving you." "That's not the point," he shot back, stepping closer. "It was a gift, Mom." "You can't just take back a gift because you're angry." I slid a document from my folder, the registration neatly highlighted, handled with the same care I once used to cool his forehead when he was 7. "Registered to Evelyn Jameson," I read aloud. "That's me." "Not you." Across the street, a woman walking her golden retriever paused mid-step, no longer pretending to be on her phone. "God, Mom, this is pathetic," he spat. "No," I said quietly. "What's pathetic is a 35-year-old man yelling in his driveway because his mother won't keep financing his failures." His face flushed deep red, not from shame, but rage. The kind of rage that comes when someone finally cuts the cord you've been pulling for too long. "You're making a scene," he hissed. I moved toward the car, opened the door, and dropped the registration onto the passenger seat. I paid the insurance, the maintenance, the gas. "You didn't even bother to change the oil I was going to," he said. "You were always going to," I replied, "just like you were going to pay me back, or get your life together, or grow up that last one hit." I saw it in his eyes, the sting of truth landing where excuses used to live. For the first time in years, he didn't have a single smart word left, just silence. And that silence, God, it was beautiful. I slid into the driver's seat and adjusted the mirror. Then came the final desperate jab. "Linda says you're losing it," he muttered. "She says you need help." That this obsession with control... I shut the door, rolled the window down, and said calmly, "Then go live with Linda. Let her help you. Let her handle your rent, buy your cars, and clean up the mess the next time you blow it," I said as the engine came to life with a soft, steady hum, smooth and dependable, everything my son no longer was. I backed out slowly, watching him shrink in the side mirror until he was nothing but a blur. I didn't glance back once. The bank was quiet that morning. Cool air, faint hum of printers, the scent of paper and toner hanging in the stillness. I walked in with my leather folder, its corners worn from years of being pulled in and out of drawers. Laura at the front desk looked up, eyebrows rising. "Evelyn? I thought you were doing everything online now." "Not today," I said with a calm smile. "Today's different. Because today wasn't about paying another bill. It was about closing a chapter." 10 minutes later, I sat across from a young woman named Clara. She had kind eyes, a neat blazer, and a wedding band that gleamed like it had only just been slipped on. She flipped through my documents. "This is the mortgage for 214 Sycamore, correct?" "Yes," I replied. "You'd like to stop the automatic payments?" "No," I said evenly. "I'd like to end the mortgage entirely. Remove myself from all liability. I'm done being tied to it." Her brows lifted. "I'm afraid that's not something we can just cancel. You're a co-signer, not just a payer." I leaned in slightly, voice steady. "I know. That's why I brought this." From the folder, I slid a freshly printed document across the desk, A legal revocation of financial responsibility, prepared the night before and notarized at precisely 8:06 that morning. The ink was still fresh when I signed it. "I'll no longer be making payments on behalf of the resident," the letter stated plainly. "He's had 5 years of assistance, and as of today, he's responsible for his own obligations." Clara read through the document carefully. "All right," she said after a moment, her tone cautious. "Submitting this will initiate formal notification. He'll receive a notice that the payment responsibility has shifted. If no payments are made within 60 days, the property will move into default." "I understand," I replied. She hesitated, glancing back at her screen. "There's also a record of you covering escrow shortages for the past 3 years. I gave a thin, weary smile. "And not one thank you note." She didn't laugh, just nodded. "Understood." Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. She tapped a few keys, opened the payment settings, and hovered her cursor over a red button labeled Cancel Automatic Payments. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm sure," I said. A single click echoed, a clean, decisive sound, and the screen refreshed. Status: canceled. She stamped the printed notice in bold red ink, the kind that leaves a mark deeper than paper. I folded the document neatly and tucked it into my folder. "Thank you, Clara," I said as I stood. She gave me a long look, half respect, half concern. "Just be ready," she said quietly. "People tend to get angry when their safety nets disappear." I smiled faintly. He should have thought of that before cutting the rope. My phone started buzzing before I even left the parking lot. "Michael." I let it ring out once, then twice. By the 4th call, I answered. "Mom!" His voice cracked, already thick with anger. "What the hell did you do?" "I just got a notification that the auto pay failed. What's going on?" "I stopped paying," I said, calm and simple. "You live there. You pay for it," I said evenly, but his voice shot up like a siren. "You can't just do that. I've got bills, a family. You're screwing up my life, Mom." "It wasn't just one comment," I replied quietly. "It's been years of taking, of disrespect." Sunday was just the last straw. "Oh my God, you're actually doing this," he hissed. "You're abandoning your own son over one bad night?" "Linda said you were dramatic." A short, bitter laugh escaped me. "Linda," I repeated. "The same woman who forgets my name at parties? The one who told me to stop dressing like I'm trying to compete with younger women? That Linda? She's my stepmother," he snapped. "She's your father's wife," I said sharply. "Not your mother, and definitely not your lifeline." The line went silent for a moment, a faint static hum between us. I could almost hear him trying to process it, struggling to find the version of me he used to manipulate, the one who smoothed things over, who always offered, who always caved. "You've always helped," he said, reaching for the old script. "That's what you do." "That's who you are, Mom?" "No," I said, calm but final. "That's who I was." Then I said the words I never thought I'd say out loud. "I'm not your safety net, Michael. I'm not your ATM, and I'm not the backup plan when Linda decides she's done paying your bills." "Jesus, this is insane," he muttered. "Do you even realize how this'll look when the house goes into foreclosure? When the kids have to move? That's not my burden anymore," I said. "It's yours. Fix it." And I hung up. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the rush of finally letting go. It was like a dam had burst, and years of quiet resentment came pouring out. Every forgotten birthday, every manipulative guilt trip, every moment he made me feel like I should be grateful he still spoke to me. Let him panic. Let him face the consequences. By the time evening came, my phone lit up again. A different number flashed across the screen, but I recognized the area code instantly. I let it go to voicemail. Then came another call. And a text. "It's Tom. We need to talk. It's about Michael." Of course it was. I considered ignoring him, but curiosity, or maybe the need to see just how far they'd go, made me answer the next ring. "Evelyn," he said, voice tight and overly measured. "I just spoke with Michael." He's devastated. What the hell happened? I almost smiled. There it was, the familiar tone. Not compassion, not concern, control. The same one he'd used 20 years ago when I told him I wanted a divorce. I stopped paying for his life, I said plainly. Tom sighed as though I were speaking nonsense. You can't just cut him off like that. He's your son, Evelyn. And he's 35, Tom. There was a pause, and then he made his first misstep. He made a mistake. I let out a low, humorless laugh. A mistake? You mean years of freeloading? The entitlement? Or maybe you're referring to the moment he called me a loser in front of the entire family while your wife smiled like a proud stage director? Don't bring Linda into this, he snapped. She's already in it, I shot back. She's the one feeding him lies about me, telling him I'm a burden who needs to be kept in her place. You and Linda built a family around protecting his ego. That's not my problem to maintain. He softened his tone, trying diplomacy. Look, we all say things we regret. That doesn't mean you destroy your relationship with your son. Linda and I just think, I interrupted. Linda and I. She speaks for you now? Or do you just repeat whatever she tells you because it's easier than thinking for yourself? Silence stretched on the line. Then came the sharpness I remembered. You always needed control, Evelyn. This is just more of that. No, I said, my voice cool and steady. What I wanted was peace. I sacrificed everything to raise that boy while you were busy starting a shinier new life. Now that it's inconvenient, you expect me to bankroll his fantasy of being a grown man while Linda strokes his ego and you pretend you raised a responsible adult. Don't talk about my wife like that, Tom snapped. Then tell her to stay out of my finances, I said evenly. He hung up first. That used to sting. Now it just felt like something heavy had finally been lifted off my chest. The old version of me would have cried, replayed every word, found a way to make it my fault. But the woman holding the phone that night simply smiled and poured herself a glass of wine. It didn't take long. Linda always liked to make an entrance, the final act of a cheap drama, showing up once the wreckage was complete, polished, and pretending innocence. Her name flashed on my screen at 9:17 p.m. No voicemail, just a text. You've made your point. Now step aside. I stared at it for a while, then hit call. Let's see how bold she was when she had to speak it out loud. Evelyn? She answered, syrupy sweet. Too sweet, the kind of voice that left a bitter aftertaste. I assume you're expecting me to be intimidated, I said calmly. She laughed lightly. No, dear. I'm reaching out because you've caused a mess, one that affects our family. Our family? I repeated. Michael's living with us now, she said smoothly. He's fragile, embarrassed. This crusade of yours is hurting him. It's not what a mother should do. I almost dropped the phone, laughing. You don't get to lecture me on motherhood, Linda. You've been playing house with another woman's child for 15 years and calling it parenting. I've done more for him in that time than you ever did, she snapped. And there it was, the real Linda. The sharpness beneath the pearls, the venom she usually kept tucked away. Then keep it up, I said. House him. Feed him. Pay his bills. Hold his hand when reality hits and he learns what adulthood actually costs. Her tone hardened. Evelyn, you think this makes you powerful? You're not strong. You're bitter. You're pathetic. And if you keep this up, don't be shocked when it all comes back to you. I didn't flinch. If you threaten me again, I said coolly, I'll have my lawyer review every email you've sent through Tom's business account. Especially the ones where you claim I'm unwell and unstable, I said. Silence. Oh, you didn't think I had those? I asked quietly. I do. And if Michael wants to drag this into court, we'll let a judge decide who's unfit and who's been pulling the strings of a grown man like a puppet. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You're bluffing. I'm not, I said, and I wasn't. "Good night, Linda." I ended the call before she could hiss another word. Then I sat in the stillness, smiling to myself. She'd expected me to break, to plead, to back down, but Linda had forgotten one crucial detail. I raised the man she's trying to control, and I know exactly what he fears. The next morning, I walked into Laura Klein's office carrying a folder that felt heavier than its contents should allow. Not because of the paper, but because of what it proved. Inside were receipts, bank records, title transfers, proof of every payment I'd made, canceled checks, property tax stubs, wire confirmations, an entire history of their lies ready to unravel in black and white. Laura, all efficiency and quiet strength, glanced up from her desk. Mid-40s, dark-rimmed glasses, voice like gravel smoothed with silk. She didn't ask how I was doing. She simply opened the folder and started reviewing. "You've been busy," she said finally, eyes still scanning the pages. "Linda called me last night," I replied. "She tried to threaten me." Laura's mouth tightened. "Let me guess, called you unstable, said you were being dramatic, and accused me of hurting the family," I added. She gave a knowing nod. Classic. That earned a faint smirk from Laura. "She really does love that phrase," she muttered. "Hurt the family." Translation: stood up for yourself. She turned the pages faster than I expected, her eyes moving with sharp precision. "You're solid," she said. "Every payment traces directly to your account. The deed, the car title, they're both in your name. You've provided financial support, housing, even paid off his debts. You didn't just help him, Evelyn, you carried him." She closed the folder with a decisive tap. "If they push this, we'll drown them in paperwork." For a moment, my throat tightened. Not from fear, not anymore, but from relief. Someone finally saw it. Someone believed me. No more twisting of the truth. No more wondering if I was overreacting. "Can I really evict him?" I asked. "You already have," she said matter-of-factly. "The mortgage cancellation sets off a delinquency notice in 30 days. If he doesn't pay, the property defaults. But if you'd rather move faster, and I'd suggest it, we can issue a 30-day notice to vacate right now." "And I'm protected legally?" "Entirely." I let out a long, steady breath, like releasing 5 years of tension all at once. Laura leaned forward. "Evelyn, you've been generous to a fault. Now you're being strategic. That's not cruelty. That's clarity." I nodded and she added, her tone lowering, deliberate, "We're not going to play dirty." "We don't have to. So what are we playing?" I asked. Her lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. "Chess." Laura didn't shut the folder right away. Instead, she flipped to one last page, leaned back, and pressed her fingertips together in thought, the way someone does when they're about to change the game. "There's one more thing," she said quietly. I waited. She slid a slim folder across the desk. I opened it and read the heading at the top. Southview Boutique. Tax compliance, Linda's little passion project, the overpriced clothing shop that never seemed to have any real customers, just endless wine tastings and Facebook live streams where she paraded around in caftans, calling herself a female entrepreneur. I looked up, and Laura's expression didn't flicker. "They owe the IRS just over $120,000 in unpaid business taxes," she said, "not counting the penalties and interest." I blinked. "She's that far under?" Laura nodded. "That boutique's been bleeding red ink for years. She's been disguising personal spending as business expenses, vacations listed as supplier meetings, jewelry written off as office equipment. Either her accountant's asleep at the wheel or they're about to lose their credentials." A dry laugh escaped me. "And Michael?" "Oh, he's involved," Laura said, flipping a page. "His name's on several documents. He co-signed a business loan she took out to expand inventory. If the IRS audits her..." She lifted one brow. "They're both liable." I sank back in the chair, and for the first time in a very long while, What I felt wasn't bitterness. It was power. "This is real?" I asked quietly. "It's real," Laura confirmed. "And it's not public yet?" "Not yet," she said. "But if Linda pushes this any further, files some nonsense about defamation or tries to contest your right to withdraw financial support, well, then we'll have no choice but to inform the IRS, strictly by the book, of course." I straightened my shoulders, voice steady. "Of course." "Civic duty," Laura said with a small, knowing smile. "You don't need to throw punches, Evelyn. You just need to remind them you could." I looked down at the folder on her desk, the evidence neatly arranged in black and white. For years, I'd believed they were all standing above me. Michael, Tom, and Linda, louder, sharper, younger, stronger. But now I held something they'd never expected me to have. Proof. And if Linda dared to come for me again, she'd finally learn what it feels like to choke on her own deceit. The notice went out that Thursday. Laura sent it by courier, official, signed, and impossible to pretend away. A 30-day notice to vacate. No negotiations, no loopholes. By Saturday morning, a moving truck idled in front of 214 Sycamore, my house. Boxes began to pile on the lawn by noon. By 3, the couch I'd bought him, the one he'd bragged was a Craigslist find, sat tilted on the curb, its fabric faded by the sun, dotted with old wine stains, still carrying the faint scent of the candles I used to send in care packages he never thanked me for. Neighbors trickled out, drawn by the quiet spectacle. Curious eyes, folded arms, half-hidden smirks. Across the street, a woman paused mid-watering, leaning over her fence for a better view. I parked half a block away, not to celebrate, not to gloat, just to see it, to finally watch the end of something that should have ended years ago. 2 teenage boys coasted by on their bikes, slowing just long enough to take in the bright red letters taped across the front door. Eviction, notice of termination of tenancy. There was no hiding it now, no story to smooth over. No pretending it was a remodel or a move by choice. This wasn't a push. It was gravity finally doing its job, and I had simply stepped aside. I stayed in my car with the window cracked, watching as Michael trudged out the front door carrying a cracked box filled with mismatched kitchenware. He looked drained, older than his years. Linda wasn't there. I figured she was at her boutique, scrambling to explain to her accountant why $700 dinners with her Pilates instructor were listed as business meetings. Michael turned toward the street, scanning the neighborhood, and then his gaze caught mine. He froze. I didn't wave. I didn't flinch. I just watched him, calm, still, steady, as though witnessing a milestone, the end of an era, a graduation of sorts, only this one was called Consequences 101. He turned away quickly, muttering to the movers, pretending not to see me. Probably praying no one else had, but someone always does. Let him tell whatever story helps him sleep, that I blindsided him, that I was heartless, that Linda had been right about me all along. The truth was printed clearly enough. Red ink, bold type, legally sealed. Time's up. The call came just after 11 p.m. I didn't need to check the name to know. "Mom?" Michael's voice was raw this time. No edge, no mockery, just the trembling sound of someone stripped bare. I said nothing. "Linda's furious," he went on. "She left." Said I embarrassed her. That I should have handled it before it got public, he said, his voice splintering. I didn't answer. "And now?" He faltered, the silence stretching until I could hear his breathing hitch. "I don't have anywhere to go." I said nothing, just listened to the faint hum of the lamp beside my bed and the sound of all his bad decisions finally catching up to him. "I'm staying at a friend's tonight," he mumbled, "but I don't know what I'm doing, Mom. I'm spiraling." His voice wavered. A soft sniff, then another. I could picture him wiping his face with the back of his hand, drowning in the weight of eviction, shame, and the sudden absence of my safety net beneath him. "Please," he whispered, small and broken, "please don't do this." I sat up, took off my glasses, and spoke quietly. "Michael." He held his breath. "I told you what would happen." "I warned you. That was just a stupid dinner," he stammered. "I was angry." "I didn't mean it." "No," I said softly. "You did mean it. You've meant it for years. That night, you just stopped hiding it." "I'm your son," he said, voice breaking. "And I'm your mother," I replied. "But I'm not your landlord. I'm not your sponsor, and I'm not your doormat." He started to cry again. "You don't understand." "I do," I said, steady now. "You're finally feeling what it's like to stand on your own, to face the fallout of your choices. And yes, it hurts." He went quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a long breath held too long. "Where you sleep tomorrow," I said gently. "That's up to you now." "How you pay your bills next month," I said evenly. "That's not my cross to carry anymore." "So you're really doing this?" he whispered. I waited a beat before answering. "I already did." A long silence followed, thick, final, then a soft click. He'd hung up. I lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling for a moment before switching off the lamp. The room was still, quiet, mine. And for the first time in years, what washed over me wasn't guilt, it was relief. 2 weeks slipped by without a word from Michael. I didn't need one. The updates came anyway, from neighbors, from the bank, and eventually from the news. Linda's boutique, her precious Southview boutique, had gone under. Not temporarily closed, not under renovation. Finished. The windows covered in brown paper, locks replaced, website wiped clean. Turns out the IRS has little patience for creative accounting, especially after 3 years of falsified expenses and missed tax filings. Laura hadn't even needed to pick up the phone. The agency was already circling. She merely gave them the faintest push. Linda's accounts were frozen. Her payment systems, PayPal, Square, Shopify, all suspended. No income, no transfers, nothing. And the best part? The audit letter arrived at their short-term rental. Michael had to sign for it himself. The aftermath was almost poetic. Linda's so-called clientele, a cluster of tennis club socialites and bored housewives who thought buying overpriced scarves made them business moguls, scattered the moment the news broke, vanishing like roaches when the light comes on. One of Linda's old customers posted a furious review on Facebook that went viral within hours. Linda Styles Boutique charged me $1,200 for a handbag made in Bangladesh. Turns out it was imported luxury from a flea market in Phoenix, and then the internet did what it always does. It devoured her. Within a week, Linda's name headlined a Reddit thread titled, "Fake Fashion Queen Fakes Everything, Even Her Taxes." Michael, once the family's shining example, now had nothing left. No house, no car, no business connections, and absolutely no one left willing to sweep up the pieces. The whispers began soon after. PTA mothers who used to gush over Linda's style, neighbors who once waved from their SUVs, and the men at Tom's golf club who suddenly remembered how quickly he'd remarried after the divorce. Even Tom couldn't dodge the fallout. At one dinner, his partner's wife apparently asked with a sweet smile, "So, does your firm handle Linda's taxes too?" Poetic justice, delivered in the language of polite society, crueler and sharper than any courtroom verdict. And me? I didn't lift a finger. The next family gathering wasn't mine to host. It was Anna's. A small birthday dinner for my youngest granddaughter. Just the girls. Simple. Warm. Free of theatrics. Until Michael walked in, late, unshaven, his face hollowed, his posture sagging, a man finally consumed by the same system he'd once weaponized. No Linda, no entourage, just a strained smile and a cheap bottle of wine clutched like an offering. He hugged Anna stiffly, mumbled greetings to the kids, then turned toward me. I stayed seated. No arms open, no soft landing. He approached slowly, uncertain, like a stray unsure if it would be welcomed or turned away. "Mom," he said quietly, I was wrong." I looked at him, really looked. Not with fury, not with sentiment, just honesty. "I know," I said. He waited as if there was more coming. Maybe he was waiting for forgiveness, maybe a hug, maybe for the woman who used to patch his mistakes with her savings and a tired smile to reappear. But that woman no longer existed. "Apologies don't pay debts, Michael," I said, voice calm, steady. "Respect does." And that starts with silence. He froze, eyes wide as if the words themselves had weight. Anna's hand rested gently on my shoulder. The children leaned closer to me instinctively, like small birds seeking shelter. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet figure at the edge of the family portrait. I was the foundation. The one they now recognized had been holding everything together all along. Michael sat down at the far end of the table, smaller than I'd ever seen him. Wordless, diminished. The woman he once called a loser now owned every inch of ground beneath him, and she didn't have to say a thing. Later that night, I sat by the fire with a cup of tea. Above the mantel was an old photo of Michael at 10. Dirt smudged on his cheeks, a treehouse in the background, eyes bright with possibility. That boy was long gone. But the woman I'd become? She was here to stay. The end. Thank you for walking beside Evelyn on her path, from humiliation to strength, from silence to peace. Would you like another story? One that ignites from the very first line?